Hi, everybody. It's Thursday, and it's time for your weekly dose of Future Law Bootcamp. I'm your host, Joe Borstein, CEO of LexFusion and general total freak about the world of legal innovation. Today, I'm here with Christian Lang, head of strategy at Reynen Court. Hey, Christian.
Hey, Joe.
So, as usual, on Future Law, the lawyers of tomorrow meet the change makers of today. We discuss the tectonic forces bubbling under the surface of the $800 billion legal industry. We discuss globalization, which is allowing lawyers and other professionals from all over the globe to collaborate seamlessly on legal work. We talk about technology that's automating the routine processes of today and relentlessly crawling up the value chain of tomorrow. We talk about the status quo of legal regulation that is being questioned and changed, allowing today, even in the US, professionals from outside of the bar to work right alongside lawyers to solve legal problems at scale, and also to enjoy some of the profits of traditional legal work. And finally, we follow the money. Outside investors are pouring into this space. These investors see opportunity to make a broken system dramatically better. Futurist Peter Diamandis likes to say, want to make $1 billion, figure out how to help 1 billion people. That stuck with me. Law affects every single solitary person on this planet. So there are a lot of people to help. There's a lot of money to make. Whatever drives you, idealism, greed, or even just excitement, I beg all lawyers to pay a little attention to this legal innovation space, and you might just find your purpose here. So again, today, I'm here with Christian Lang, head of strategy at Reynen Court, NYU law grad, Davis Polk alumni, and creator of the massive New York Legal Tech Meetup, one of the greatest ways to dip your foot into the world of legal technology. Full disclosure, I am a small Reynen Court investor. Let's kick it off. Christian, tell us about, for people that don't know, most probably do, what is Reynen Court and what's your role there?
Fool's errand to do quickly. I'll do my best, Joel.
Just a simple question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Reynen Court is the app store for legal, for large law firms and corporate legal departments. It's a single platform for legal tech that aims to make it very easy for firms and corporates to quickly find and evaluate, securely test and deploy, and then strategically manage technologies, including the most modern, cool, interesting, cutting edge technology, but in a way that doesn't ask those legal enterprises to change their historical preferences around security, stability, and control. And we do that by leveraging the power of portability conferred by the Kubernetes ecosystem and the cloud native computing movement, where if you design apps the right way, you can kind of abstract them from their infrastructure and make them portable. And as I said, we're essentially an app store. We were founded with the backing of in the support of a fantastic consortium of 20 of the biggest and best law firms in the world who all have the same pain around, the time and cost associated with finding new tech, the security obstacles to actually getting your hands on it, actually using it. And then when you could even get it plugged in, it doesn't work with your operational ecosystem and all the other stuff around it. So basically, we created this platform experience that if you want to understand it in a nutshell, just think about that app store analogy. What is an app store? It's a place you go to find stuff. That half of the analogy everybody gets. And we actually have a really robust solution store that curates a huge amount of content, like mini Gartner reports on all the solutions, product description, vendor compliance, app security, commercial terms, and that's a pretty significant lift. The part about app stores that people don't always understand, which is the really important part, this is what transformed the consumer technology industry. Mm-hmm. It's you put in place a structure where if you want to consume an app, you click a button and a pre-vetted, pre-tested package of code automatically deploys into the computing environment of choice that you control, and it works well with everything around it. Essentially, I'll spare you the ins and outs, but we essentially have put in place all the pipes and plumbing and automation to take those Docker containerized applications and bring that consumer technology experience into legal enterprise, which has lots of interesting knock-on effects I'm sure we might get to later. But that, in a nutshell, that's Reynen Court, and I'm their head of strategy. In addition to kind of discharging core strategy functions, I also run the vendors group. You can think about what we're doing at a high level of abstraction as building a marketplace. And so that the seller side of that marketplace, me and my team help cultivate relationships with and run and try to support.
It's truly a fascinating business model. And I think the App Store is a great analogy. It is very much like LexFusion, kind of a meta level innovation, right? Like you are innovating on top of an influx, like a massive influx in new legal technology that for the first time, I think in history is routinely bringing new value and new capabilities to the market.
And enabling. I mean, the key, ours is a true digital platformization play. So it's actually the best analogies. Think about the Airbnbs of the world, and the social media companies and everything else. We're helping to create a marketplace and then clear it and let the actual legal technology market work. There's so many obstacles now. It's so opaque who's using what, market forces don't operate the way they should. We're trying to take all the friction out of the system. So when you need something, you don't need to worry about the security stuff. You can plug it in, use it, pay for what you use, and put it back on the shelf and just make things work quickly.
And then one of the great things about like any app store, obviously the Apple App Store, is, over time you start to see which pieces of technology rise and which sink, right? You see, popularity, ratings, all that other stuff. Is there a feedback mechanism baked into Reynen Court that allows people to see what's already working and kind of move things more quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that is the key effect of with really effectively created platform layers. As we were just talking about, it lets things actually work and it lets market forces operate, which has a few effects. One, you think of the ratings and reviews. That's an important piece. And that's not something that we do today. We're very sensitive to not trying to, we're not trying to pick winners and losers. We're objective, neutral pipes and plumbing, just trying to let the market work. But there may be an important role in our ecosystem for that down the road. But the other effect, when you have these structures in place, people can have, experts who are solving their own problems can spin up really important, compelling businesses very quickly without a ton of overhead and solve narrow problems really effectively. And so you'll see this incredible bloom of new technologies, right? And then what the platform layer does, in addition to sustaining the bloom, it facilitates combinatorial innovation. So the innovators who are on the buy side will find interesting ways to combine different tools and to build actual end-to-end workflows. And then people will start plugging gaps and building connectors. And that's what happened in the consumer space and why technology is so dramatically different now than it was 10 years ago. And we are on the brink of that transformative technology revolution in legal, as sustained by the platforms that are out there, hopefully ours, but if not ours, somebody doing something very much like it.
And that's a concept that we talk about as like the adjacent possible. Most innovation is actually just the combination of a handful of relatively new things that are just placed together. Right now it's very difficult to access the adjacent possible because things are not speaking to each other.
Totally. And there's all kinds of problems. I mean, like to your point about driving value and ROI and everything else, one of the big problems is when somebody identifies a need at these legal enterprises, you can't strike while the iron's hot. Like there's like a 6-month lead time to try to line things up and get it deployed. Or people in the back office are making decisions and the practitioners don't have access to the tools. They don't know what's possible, et cetera. So that's part and parcel of our project, is trying to help bring more people into that technology conversation and enable you to deploy at the moment of need. So something happens and you see an opportunity, and then you can actually do it. And then you can share learnings about, we did it this way in this office, that office should do it, et cetera. So
let's get personal here for a minute. You, like me, I think are a certified total freak about legal innovation. Am I wrong?
Fair characterization.
Fair characterization. So, but unlike me, I like parts of practice, but I did, by the time I left, I knew that practice wasn't for me. You have gone on the record many times, including with me, that you love practicing. You practice at Davis Polk, which basically won this year, as Jay Ohm put it.
I was a very proud alum.
Fantastic firm. You clerked, I believe, on the 11th Circuit. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? And spent a fulsome 5+ years with the firm. That's putting in real time. You loved it. What made you decide, before it was cool, like now, to make your first jump, which was into legal innovation generally, even before Reynen Court?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I'm a total weirdo. I'm backward. Like I love the first year of law school, but not as much the rest, opposite of most people. And I actually am somebody who started to enjoy practice more and more the more I was there, which again tends to work the other way. And to be clear, I didn't always love it at a visceral level. I had my share of horror stories and long hours and everything else, but there was kind of a interesting, rich fulfillment. To answer your question, it's funny. I just had to go back and unpack this and think about this again as a result of a podcast I did with Steve Poor on the Pathfinders, and which was a ton of fun. And I had to think. It's been so long. I had to think about how that actually went down. I love practicing law, but if you're going to be happy as a lawyer, you got to want to be the guy behind the guy. I mean, it's an agency role. It's a service industry, and you have to really be fulfilled by being somebody else's trusted advisor. And if that's not you, I'm not sure that's a great pathway. And for me, I love doing that, and I think there's a lot of honor in that, and it's a wonderful thing to do. But I like to create and build things and bring new things into the world. And I had no idea what I could do to build something or create something, but I knew that I didn't want it to be short-lived. I knew that I wanted it to be meaningful and maybe outlive me and have something that advances the cause of humanity, or however you want, whatever grandiosity you want to attach to it. I mean, there's something like that, right? And so I got zeroed in on tech. And, legal, as we know, it's changing, thank goodness. But, it's a laggard when it comes to technology as a vertical. It's not a leader, right? The one exception to that, I got very excited about the KM challenge at law firms. I personally, I think you're some of the same way, Joe. I'm an incredibly social thinker. I do my best thinking, reacting to what other smart people are saying. Like somebody will say something and that will spark a thought, and I'll say it. It's a very feedback-oriented, really social experience for me to do my best thinking. And that's a really interesting, law firms are that way. They do really complicated things, and they build on this incredible brain trust of expertise, and they take the next step. And they also have all this incredible web of confidentiality and other restrictions that apply in the industry. So they are facing the most thorny challenge around expertise management and knowledge management. And I actually thought, for that high level of advisory professional services, this is the context where a leading technology that could unlock human potential this is the lab for it. It could be incubated here, unlike most other technologies. So I actually jumped out the window to try to start a KM-focused venture that was trying to solve that problem for myself, for transactional lawyers looking to find things, connect with the right resources internally, et cetera. And I kind of stumbled backward into this funny little weird legal technology world that we live in, and was kind of off to the races with some of the other projects that ultimately led me to Reynen Court.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Let's focus in on a threshold problem. You mentioned lawyers are not always leaders and are usually laggards when it comes to adopting new technology. The gorilla in the room, I believe, is the cloud. There is certainly now a movement to move to the cloud, but a lot of the traditional white shoe firms and the absolute leaders in the space are still not there. Walk us through that controversy, because it seems like the whole rest of the global economy is in the cloud.
Yeah, no, it's a really important conversation to have, because it's never had at the right level of nuance, I think, to make progress. So here's the really good news. The really good news is in like the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, you're no longer hearing the people saying, I don't like cloud, I'm scared of the cloud's not secure. There's been a real maturation of thinking around what the cloud is and how that works. And everyone now is convinced that done properly, cloud is fantastic and offers huge benefits, which is pretty uncontroversial, but can be done in an incredibly secure way. And that's fantastic. And some firms are jumping in and leaning in. But, particularly the biggest firms that you were mentioning doing work on behalf of a bunch of the big banks and other things, they have some very real restrictions. And we've learned recently that there are still some very real risks. I mean, the SolarWinds stuff, the Excellion hacks, I mean, these represent some really important events that are making people just have to make very deliberate judgments. But going back to the core point, cloud, the future is absolutely in cloud. Everyone gets that. There's a nuance, though. It's not necessarily the case that you can just jump feet first in the cloud and just start consuming SaaS solutions willy-nilly. Because if you think about it, if you're going to take a fully SaaS strategy, what are you essentially doing? You need an application and a compute layer to interact with some data, your confidential data, your client's data, right? When you're using a SaaS solution, you're being asked to duplicate that data and send it out to somebody else's computers and servers on the back end that they control. Now, that's fine. You can diligence vendors, you can put them through the ringer, you can keep an eye on code changes and policy enforcement and make sure that works. And they should. And there's lots of great vendors doing it right and winning huge customer bases in a SaaS model, and that's fantastic. And we call them in our Reynen Court parlance the cloud champions. The problem is these large legal enterprises, they don't need 5 solutions. They don't need 20 solutions. They need 1,000 or 5,000 solutions. These really cool new things that are adding huge value to the business and practice. And even today, the largest law firms in the world are running between 500 and 1,000 applications out of their data centers. I don't care who you are, you don't have the bandwidth to run that same right diligence process on behalf of every single one of those vendors as you move to the cloud, which is why all of the smart money is moving into a different cloud paradigm. It's virtual private cloud orchestration. It's environments you control where you put a security perimeter around things and you put most of your apps in one place using standard tooling and run them in the same way. Sorry, what were you about to say?
I'm going to ask just a terrible question, and feel free to be like, there's no good way for me to answer that. What the hell are these 800 apps? Like, I feel like I practiced for 5, now granted it was now 10 years ago, but I can remember like 6 things. So, that means like 794 things that I can't account for.
No, I mean, look, man, any firm that's gone through a merger has partners who are like, well, I use that, I need that, I totally need that. And all of a sudden, what was a 400 app stack goes to 800 very quickly, right? Like,
there's a lot of redundant, I assume.
A lot of shelfware. That's another huge industry problem that I'm excited at Reynen Court. We're going to attack it at the end of this year, which is people don't know who's using what internally, right? It's a real significant problem. And also people don't have a sense for the total cost of ownership of technology. Everyone's focused on license cost, which is important, but it's a minor driver in the total cost of ownership. It's about how easy or difficult is it to implement? What are the infrastructure related costs? Those are the big ones. So if you need to price a new legal offering, if you're going to try to find margins by attacking a new line of work or trying to grow in a geography or a region of a country, and you need to start having informed pricing, and those offerings are going to be tech enabled, you better start to develop a more holistic understanding of what the total cost of ownership is of your technology, which is an increasingly important part of the input.
Yeah, and as someone who sold legal technology for the better part of my career, another challenge that you routinely bump up against is allocation, like allocation of the cost. Either the firm eats it and it's baked into the hourly rates, which is controversial because if you're bringing in, why should the whole firm eat something that's for just the litigation group, or you're pushing those costs to the end client, which is completely fair and transparent. But if under a SaaS license, people do struggle to figure out how to fairly allocate costs of things that benefit the whole group. I know that's something you're working on in Reynen Court. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. It's a pretty simple concept, but also a very important one. You need to be able to allocate usage to individual matters, right? We do this when you and I used to legal research. When you use Lexis and Westlaw, the first thing you do is put in a client matter number, and it tells you, right? But what about other tools? I mean, so a lot of tools don't give you the ability to allocate usage to client matters, or if they do, they give you a free text field, and that doesn't have any hygiene around it. There's no validated experience of looking up and attributing a client matter number to work. So we're in our data hub building a process where we can give an applet vendors can take, and they can plug it into the application like a plugin and just say, yeah, you can validate client matter lookup information, enforce ethical walls within applications. Then the vendors can deliver to the platform usage information about what's happening inside the app. But the more important thing, as we were just talking about, is what's happening outside the app. So you run an app, you use X% of throughput of the app based on whatever pricing model the app has, but you're also using storage. You're also using compute. You're also using network capacity, right? In our platform, the telemetry capture within our platform is the thing that captures that usage as it's happening and then matches it up with the client attributed usage of the app itself and gives you a picture that says, all right, this month, if you were using X solution, that's Y by the page or Z by the gigabyte, here's what you used client by client, and here's the cost, including the infrastructure.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm a lawyer who's thinking about leaving Davis Polk or some other fantastic firm and starting their own legal technology company. I got enough problems. That is a problem that, in theory, in the future, I don't have to worry about because that's baked in to this basket of benefits I'm getting by going to Reynen Court. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're basically trying to take all that horrifically horrible, terrible, difficult stuff. I mean, we go through a lot of pain to actually do the hard yards of getting it done. But the idea is to give everyone kind of this easy turnkey experience of consuming what they need when they need it. For the vendors, we try to let them serve any customer no matter where that customer needs to be. So if they need to run on-prem, great. If they need to run a virtual private cloud, great. If they'll take your SaaS offering, great. It's all good. same code base, you can service it all as long as you're using that modern microservices cloud native architecture. And for firms, you give them the ability, months to minutes, you source, plug in, you bring the apps to the data instead of sending the data out to the apps, and you strategically deploy at the moment of need. So yeah, that's exactly the vision in plugging into those core systems and make the integrations work.
Okay, I got one more cloud question, and then we'll move into some closers. So I know that there are still a lot of firms that are constitutionally adverse to the cloud. That's still true, right? That's not just one or two exceptions.
No, it's totally still true. Aderant just actually released a really interesting report on some of those cloud dynamics. Yeah, it's absolutely true, particularly when client data is involved, which is no surprise.
So my question is, I can't get through an hour without touching things in the cloud. Like, how do people avoid things like Google Translate and other data storage techniques? Like, does there have to be training on almost like it's almost unavoidable these days? I guess
it is absolutely unavoidable. There's a massive shadow IT problem. We're living under the shadow of this massive black cloud of shadow IT, and it's just
good to hear it from an expert.
It's just a reality. I routinely heard not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, from a law firm that they're getting 20,000 hits a month in Google Translate. Now, some of that might be somebody booking vacation plans, but the vast majority of those hits are policy violations. Yeah, right. Translating a brochure, whatever. No, but like those are almost all policy violations, and that's like one of our big app winners in our ecosystem is SDL, RWS's machine translation engine, which you can deploy at the push of a button. It looks and feels just like Google Translate, and you can run it in your own environment. So when you're translating the confidential data, it doesn't leave the security perimeter. Wherever you put that security perimeter, we love cloud. Like the whole purpose of Reynen Court is to allow you to take that security perimeter that right now is around your data center and extend it to embrace virtual private clouds.
And that's the Kubernetes thing.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. Yeah, exactly. It lets you run it on your infra as opposed to having to send your data out to somebody else's infra.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. I wanted to touch on a few more, again, I guess a little bit more personal topics. I know you really believe in the value that lawyers create. Enjoyed being a lawyer. We talked about that. How do you see your work now as like a continuation of those challenges you had as a lawyer and those ideals of practicing law?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because I am a zealous lawyer champion, unabashed, very pro-lawyer, which is not always common in the legal innovation space. And I am convinced, on the litigation side, it's easy to understand lawyer value. On the transactional side, it's less clear. I remember in law school, I had a really funny exercise trying to define that value, and it was actually quite challenging. I'm convinced we add a ton of value, but I think it's one of our biggest challenges, and this isn't just about legal technology, it's about legal generally, is we have a difficult time identifying exactly where that value lives and telling the right value stories around it. And one of the reasons I love legal technology so much is it is legal technology that is starting to help us suss out the difference between those things that are algorithmically reducible and can and should be data-driven, and the other things that are really high-value, judgment-based, human, psychological things that are the reasons why we all went to law school. The advice we love to give, the things that we're passionate about as lawyers, it is using more and more legal technology that will necessarily help us locate and find that stuff that we love about our practice. And that's where we will get to spend our time. So I think it has this really powerful fundamental sorting function that helps us identify value, which will lead to not only a better experience for lawyers, more value for clients, but will wildly expand access to legal services, which, as you know, we're in this funny thing where everything's expensive and we do it in this backwards way, but the market for legal services is so dramatically underserved. It's exciting to think about the implications of tech enabling practice in fixing some of those inefficiencies.
Absolutely. We simultaneously claim we have too many lawyers, and yet almost every human being and most companies feel underserved.
Totally. Same thing in the same thing in the tech industry. I love people who are like consolidation. There's too many tools, and I'm sitting here. One of the funnest part of my jobs is making the rounds to 100 firms and hearing, not with the vendor hat on, but more as like the advisor or consultant, like what they're using, what they need. We're just at the very beginning of this thing. I mean, we're at the very bottom of the adoption curve. So when I hear people talking about the market being oversaturated, I just kind of laugh because in reality, people aren't using anything and they're just getting started. It's an incredibly exciting time.
Well, in our building of LexFusion, we've heard over and over, and we're a services company that also helps people find the right tools. Aren't you a competitor with Reynen Court? And my answer is Reynen Court will put us out of business, but it will take 20 years. And that's even with great success. Like, people are going to need hand-to-hand combat understanding of what's going on for a long time, and they absolutely need what you're doing as well. So last question, let's touch on the excitement in the industry. Clio is a unicorn, Ironclad's a unicorn, Relativity is a unicorn, iCertis is a unicorn. For our audience, unicorn is just a private company worth over $1 billion. This is unprecedented times. Those are all in the last 6 months. The cash taps are flowing. Opine.
Yeah. No, look, it's an incredibly exciting time. I am somebody, though, who is not a huge fan of kind of traditional VC backing legal. I don't think it meets that well with our industry. So I don't think you need to get on that clock if you don't need to do it. I think some of that is a product of tools starting to get traction. Some of that is a product of investors that traditionally saw this vertical as too small and not wanting to get into it or seeing other challenges with it, reevaluating that and seeing that. And we experience that when we're out doing our fundraising, and I also see it in all of our vendor partner companies and their processes. And then also some of that is just good old fashioned inflated valuation, which is exciting and fun, but we are at some frothy levels right now when you start to hear through the grapevine what the actual revenues of some of these companies are that are raising these Goliath amounts of money. So I don't know, it's fun, exciting times. I try not to get too caught up in it. I love businesses that are bootstrapped and founders solving their own problems in narrow little ways. And there's great big opportunities that you should just absolutely fund up and go for scale and try to solve them. But for me, I always look for the diamonds in the rough personally.
Yeah, no, they're both really exciting. But look, every other industry has had their moments of froth, and through the moments of froth, often you have tremendous motion forward. Though certainly money is both won and lost.
It's true, but you're right. It's doubly exciting here.
Creative destruction, right?
It coincidentally comes at a time when we have all just been forced to take this great leap forward from a technological perspective. I know a lot of people don't think about working from home as being a great leap forward, but this was something that most of these firms had a plan in place, but had not executed on anything of this scale this quickly, not even by a factor of 10. And most of them did it flawlessly. And it instilled a huge amount of confidence in their ability to execute and manage that change and make this all work. And so I think that ice-breaking effect, coupled with the dollars flowing into the system, will have hugely positive effects. Not exclusively positive effects, but definitely hugely positive effects.
Any last words before we call it?
No, man, I'm excited. I see myself in my role at Reynen Court as just very similar to running the meetup and Inspire Legal. I mean, we are literally here to help, try and take the friction out, help the vendor side, help the buyer side, and just try to get more people using more things more easily. So I just encourage anyone listening that's passionate about the space, that's trying to do something interesting. I'm at your disposal. Please feel free to reach out anytime. I love talking about it, and I love trying to support the ecosystem as best I can. So. And
Christian means that he will get back to you. So Christian, thank you so much. Again, Christian Lang, Head of Strategy at Reynen Court. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next week on Future Law Bootcamp. Have a good week.